I'm Adam Crum with
I'm Brad Moseley.
I'm Dan Kaplow, and you're watching the Break It Down show.
Oh yeah, we get to do some great stuff around here. Thanks for inviting me over, fellas. I appreciate this. I guess Brad, help us understand what the heck it is that we're doing today, because you know all about it. It's your project. This is going to be super interesting, everybody. Check out that big fancy picture of the SS Central America. So, Brad, tell us who we are, what we're doing.
Okay, so originally I began my career working with Adam Crum here, who is regarded as one of the leading numismatists in the country in both shipwreck treasure and rare coins back in 2001. And Adam has written and contributed to over 20 books on the subject of rare coins and is widely regarded as one of the top numismatists in our country. And at the time that I began working with the company, the shipwreck of the SS Central America was front and center. So at the time, I read a book by Gary Kinder called Ship of Gold in the Deep Blue Sea, sort of as an intro. It got me involved and understanding the events that happened on the voyage of the SS Central America, which was going from San Francisco to New York via the Isthmus of Panama, and met a hurricane that caused the ship to sink. And when I had read the book and came to the conclusion that this would make a great movie idea, I had found out there was another producer who was making the movie, and I had sort of let it alone. I didn't really follow up on my idea because I was a screenwriter and a film producer prior to working for the company in 2001. And then roughly 7 years ago, John Damiano, who works with Finest Known, recommended that I sit down and start writing the screenplay on the story. Otherwise, the film would not get made. And I thought, you know what, you're right. It's been almost 20 years. So we took it to task, wrote the screenplay. Dan Kaplow, who sits on my left here, I financed his first two movies in the mid-90s, and we stayed friends for the last 35 years. Dan's career has gone on and produced many successful films, television. In fact, his last movie was Rolling Loud with Owen Wilson, which will be coming out sometime in 2026. And finished the screenplay in September of 2025, sent it to Dan. Dan read it, loved it, and we decided that we were going to go forward and develop it and make it into a feature film. And here we are today.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
Putting this crew together, that's not easy. I'm trying to put a crew together for a movie I'm making, and none of this
Yeah.
stuff is simple because timing and money and all these things have to line up. What's the hardest part about all of that in a project like this?
Well, the money is obviously the key to making the project. So back in the mid 90s, I had my own production company and I was raising money privately. And then I met Dan and his partner at the time, and they were making a movie, and they said, we need some help financing the film. And I said, well, I'm, able to raise money privately.
Yeah.
And that's how our relationship began. We did a film called Almost Hollywood together. And then we did the next movie after that was Cityscapes, Los Angeles, which really is an independent film, got a lot of notice. And then my final film before I came to work with Adam in 2001 was a movie called Titus with Anthony Hopkins and Jessica Lange, directed by Julie Taymor. And, that was kind of like I think my swan song,
Right.
Going from two indies to a film like that. And, there's a story behind that, but we'll talk about that another day.
I got a couple of guys here on screen too. I want to make sure I bring them into
Yeah,
the
please
story.
do.
So I want to pop Bob Evans into the window. Tell us about Bob Evans, and then we'll get everybody talking here in a moment.
Adam, why don't you talk about it?
You want me to take that one?
Yeah,
Okay.
take that one, please.
Well, Bob and I have become dear friends, and Bob was instrumental in the story that we're going to talk about today, the SS Central America. He's the co-discoverer. He's the one man that's been on the planet that's been with this project since day one.
Mm.
When I say day one, I'll let him expand on that a little bit, but literally the brainstorming of the idea of trying to find a needle in a haystack known as the SS Central America. So without Bob, arguably none of us would be sitting here today.
Correct.
The historic data that he put together, the stories that he knows intimately from survivors of the shipwreck, people that were lost on the shipwreck. He had to compile all that data to organize and build a search area, a probability map of where the target might be. And so, fast forward a little bit through all the crazy years of litigation, recovery, which he can talk about, but taking it to market, which I've been intimately involved with. This story, or the shipwreck and the treasure itself, pretty major character in my life, for a quarter of a century now. And Bob has played a big portion of that, and I think he would concur. We've grown a friendship that certainly transcends the treasure, and I feel like that he and I have stood for the treasure at sometimes maybe it didn't make sense to do so, but for the treasure itself, he's been the champion, and I've been honored to be his champion and a champion of the treasure as well. So with that, I'll just let Bob kind of talk a little bit about himself and his experience.
Bob, you incredible man. Tell us about yourself.
Oh, shucks, Adam. I had a thing or two to do with it. I got involved in late 1983 with the project founder Tommy Thompson, who was an engineer businessman who asked me to take the historical research he had begun, augment it, and turn that into something that was presentable to a world-class search mathematician, somebody whose work is used in Coast Guard search and rescue in order to find enemy submarines and all kinds of other things. But that led to a search map. It led to us searching hundreds of square miles of ocean floor in 1986, ultimately finding the shipwreck and the treasure in 1988. And I have been on every dive to this shipwreck, serving to recover, catalog, curate, and conserve the artifacts, and then became more or less a spokesperson for the entire project, the treasure and its story. So I'm here today to contribute whatever I can.
Bob, I want to clarify something, because you said you were present for every dive. Some listeners may not understand that this dive was 1.5 miles deep, and it's not like a bunch of treasure hunters with scuba gear diving on the shipwreck.
Yeah.
It was quite a technological event that had never been done before. In fact, you guys were being told it was impossible, and you did the impossible. So explain a little bit about what a dive really was.
Well, a lot of people are now familiar through movies like Titanic and various other things with deep sea operations in ways that they were not back in the 1980s. We were rather pioneering in the way that we developed equipment to work. This is 7,200 feet deep, 2,200 meters deep. So 1.5 miles, something like that. Well below any light, at enormous pressure, cold temperatures. Fascinating place, the SS Central America shipwreck. We managed to find it and find the treasure there. But dives, you launch a remotely operated vehicle into the water. It takes a couple of hours to get to the bottom, whereupon we sit in a control room and watch on television. At least that's my role. Some people who are watching on television also have control of the robot, but I simply direct and manage the dive, I guess, as much as anything. But I was the scientist on point amidst all of these world-class engineers. The vehicles itself is as complex as a spacecraft. It's amazing what these guys did with what we had back then. Nowadays, we have the computing power in our cell phones many times over what we use to recover over 2 tons of gold from the bottom. It's amazing. even thinking back on it, our accomplishments back then with the equipment that we had were quite remarkable.
When you recover 2 tons of gold from the bottom, how do you lift that? What's getting it a mile and a half up? That's not an easy. I don't want to lift 2 bars of gold a mile. So how are you doing that, man?
Well, the robot is hydraulically operated, so it has enormous lifting power. Once we land on the bottom, we essentially have a heavy piece of equipment. One of its arms is even a small excavator arm. We don't use the excavator functions on the end of that, but that's the sort of heavy hydraulic equipment we're talking about landing down there. Through precise computer controls, it also can be very delicate, which is important in recovering coins that can be worth $20,000 and more each. We recovered over 10,000 gold coins from the bottom, 500 and what is the number? 78, I think. I should know that number. 578 gold ingots, varying size from a little under 5 ounces to over 933 ounces. It was all done by robotics, remote control. Yeah, one like what Brad's holding there.
This is a 1857 San Francisco $20 gold piece from the shipwreck treasure, rated Mint State 66 condition. It's a super gem, $20 gold piece from the first expedition, and it's a beauty.
You know, what's amazing to me is, this coin he's holding up really is a representation of a story that is so fantastic, it's hard to believe. It's like, you can't make this stuff up. It's more than just a coin. For me, being a numismatist and being involved in coins since I was 5 years old, these things transcend what you would consider coin market, and they tell a story. And I think that's the story you guys are trying to tell, is the events that led up to the sinking, and then the ongoing story of the people that either were perished or survived the shipwreck.
True.
It's amazing to me. I got the opportunity this morning. You send me something,
Yeah.
and don't do that to me again,
Sorry.
because I don't like to wake up in the morning
And have a cry.
and with tears in my eyes at 6 a.m. But I think and I think Bob could give the same testimony. I almost feel like I know some of the characters from the ship, and the coins and the ingots and the artifacts live on. I can't imagine Bob bringing up a trunk that belonged to a survivor that we now know who it was, and you're literally laying out clothes and boots and cigars that this person carried on the ship with them, that went to the bottom of the ocean and sat there for 140 years. It's just so incredible to me. And, I watched that 1-minute clip, and it spoke to me in so many ways. Even the hope, the very opening scene, the hope of the look in his face of hope. He's about to, a new adventure. He's going to New York, leaving the gold rush. Obviously, he had done well, and gets on the ship and finds himself 20 days later, fighting for his life, and ultimately lost his life. But pretty incredible story. The treasure obviously is so exciting. The gold is an amazing event, or something that survives today, that tells the story of arguably, behind the Titanic, the most important shipwreck, maybe the most important shipwreck in American history, probably is. It's the worst maritime disaster and greatest loss of life in U.S. maritime history, and took 2.5 tons of gold, which triggered the Panic of 1857, which led to a 3-year depression that, some pretty credible names called it kind of a precursor to the Civil War, because the economy had just fallen to shambles.
Right.
And most people aren't aware of that story. And I think telling this story is going to bring a lot to life, and it will communicate to a lot of folks, and it will to me.
I know we're talking about storytelling, so let's bring in. Should we bring in Gary Hanna, because he works on
Gary Hanna.
Yeah, so introduce Gary for us.
Okay, Gary Hanna is the concept artist and illustrator extraordinaire, and as you can see, there are some images behind us that Gary has been working on diligently, and had done the original image of the SS Central America that is actually being used to certify the second recovery of the SS Central America coins. And Gary, perhaps you can share with us a little bit about your background and career.
Sure. Thanks, Brad. Well, I've been an illustrator and art director primarily in games for about 30 years. My love, though, has been illustration. And I think it was 2012, I did the illustration for Scholastic for the story of the SS Central America. They were producing in one of their classroom magazines. And so it somehow found the eyes of, I say, John, Brad, maybe at the same time. I'm not actually sure. And I got a phone call. And, you know, they had this crazy idea of making a movie about this thing. And that sounded cool. And so I didn't hear from them for another, 8 years plus or something like that. And I got another mysterious call. And here we are. So I'm excited to be aboard with these guys, and it's certainly a pleasure for me and a creative gold mine. I love history, and I, of course, love bringing that into a visual form. And these guys are just really bringing to life a really interesting story.
You know, the whole idea here with Gary for me is that we wanted to storyboard the scenes in the film and pick the most iconic moments that really stand out sort of as a director and a actor visualization of what they can anticipate this film to look like, because we're talking about a almost 300-foot sidewheel steamship in a hurricane in 50 to 100-foot seas with 100-mile-an-hour winds, where they were fighting for survival for over 3 days, and over 600 passengers were on the ship. So to me, this is the story that, you know, shows the evolution of, you know, where they start in San Francisco, how they travel down the coast of California to the Isthmus of Panama, cross that on a small train. In Aspinwall, they pick up the SS Central America, and from there, they continue on the journey until they run into the hurricane off the coast of the Carolinas, and that's where the battle begins. And we go through all the people that are significant that were on the ship to create an original story based on what actually happened in real time. So that's the way that it has been created. Dan, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I just want to say, first of all, I'm grateful to be here and working with Brad. A 30-year friendship is going to culminate in the greatest movie of my career. And to meet, you know, Adam and Bob and Gary and John and everyone here associated with the project, it's really just a dream come true. We're going to honor the hundreds of people that died on that ship. I mean, it's a real event. We're not making up any of this stuff. So it's very important to me to make this as authentic as possible. I'm a physical production producer. I've been producing television and movies for 35 years. I've been partners with Steven Spielberg, with Peter Jackson, the Russo brothers. You know, I've done huge things and I've done small things, and they're all the same. Every project I do, it almost kills me because I put 150% of my life into it. And this project may actually kill me. This is a very difficult motion picture that we're going to bring to life. You know, we're going to have to build a 278-foot steamship on a stage, and it has to withstand water, hurricane force winds. The actors have to be able to perform what they do in a safe way. And how do you do that? Well, we're trying to figure that out right now. We have a wonderful production designer, Tony Fanning, working with us. And we're going to be, Brad and I, in December, went over to Europe to begin to set the project up. We're going again next week. And we'll begin the adventure in Belfast, which is kind of ironic because, or coincidental more, because that's where they built the Titanic, and we're going to build the Central America. We'll be building this on a stage over there, and bringing the entire thing to life and then to the world in 2028 probably.
That's incredible. Yeah, I know Sebastian Younger. He wrote that book, Perfect Storm.
Yeah.
And it's great talking to him about that whole research of that whole thing. There's a lot of speculation. There's logbooks to keep track of. How on earth do you guys tell that story about the Central America when how much of that stuff exists still? Are there logbooks? Are there scientific records?
That's a great story. I mean, that's a great question. Essentially, a lot of this was documented in the newspapers, and I'm sure Bob Evans could step in and comment on that question.
The contemporary news accounts were really amazing for this. Steamships were one of the two great technological miracles of the age. The second was the telegraph. For the first time in human history, it was able to exchange messages and information over long distances instantaneously. Not all the way to the West Coast. That took things like steamships to get mail to and from there. But this information, the loss of this ship met a very news-hungry audience. And from their landing first in Norfolk, later in Savannah, and later in New York, the survivor accounts sent all over the telegraph network all around the east coast of the United States, and many people shared their stories. We were able to glean actual physical information from over 30 of these accounts that gave us real data about the strength of the storm, how long it lasted, in the case of the mariners on deck, what direction the wind was blowing and its strength, what kind of sails they were able to set. A really remarkable body of information survived this disaster. And that's, in fact, what led us to its location. But it makes for quite a story. The survivor accounts, when placed in chronological order or near chronological order, are quite a tale unto themselves.
How many people survived, Bob?
153. And 425 is my best count for the lost.
When you guys try to put these stories together, what is the nature of the story? Is this a two-hander? Is it, like Titanic, where it's multiple locations, multiple storylines?
No. I mean, specifically when I looked at this, I realized there were copyright issues by trying to include the recovery of the treasure. And being that I was genned in very early in the film business about copyright and infringing on copyrights, what I wanted to do was write an original story based on the event that happened between August 20 and September 12th that is historical fact, and you can't copyright something that actually happened, historically speaking. So, and then, coming together with a cohesive story that tells how it all went down, and the characters that I decided to utilize, like George Dawson, who is a free black porter on the ship. He's really the through line for the entire story. So I used him as the key person that we meet all the other individuals that we're going to meet on the journey to the end of the story. And so George is there from start to finish. And, that was it in a nutshell for me. It was just most of the time, because I was also involved in selling the treasure, talking to people about the treasure. So you feel like the ghosts of those individuals were sort of circulating in my mind all the time. And I was formulating in my own mind how I would write the story. And I felt like if you brought in the recovery process and you made it more like Titanic, it would lose an effective power of just that event itself. And in my mind, ultimately, when this is done, everything else that is extant about this story will be forthcoming. And that, leads us into the next chapter.
Yeah, Brad and John wrote a beautiful script, very personal script, character driven.
Mm.
And, the ship is a character in the movie. The storm is a character in the movie. But it's really about the people. And you'll get to know these people very well, and you'll watch, like Shakespeare did, a tragedy unfold. And I think everyone is going to be very surprised at how brutal this storm was and how awful those conditions were. And the story of survival for these people was absolutely incredible. You've never seen anything like it in a movie.
No.
And that's what we're going to bring to life.
I love it. I love it. Because of my ridiculous show, I get to meet all these people. And this professor from UC Davis wrote about the thing called the Valletta. And it was the first time that a ship sailed from Mexico to the Spice Islands, Philippines, and then back. Because that was not done on purpose by anybody. And the dudes that ended up doing it first had almost died. Rats were getting into their water barrels. Everything was going. You guys know how these stories go.
Sure.
They had taken all of the clothes that they were left. They had to sew them together into a sail, so they were absolutely naked. And as they're about to go and hit the coast of Mexico, that storm comes up, and it's desperate to throw them in the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah.
And so they start praying to God. And there's no way in the world you can convince those guys, because they survived, that God didn't save them. And the descriptions of the storm are just remarkable. And it's the stuff of movies. And so I'm so glad you guys are telling that. Another thing that we don't realize is that even today, if you're down in Baja and you want to go back to Seattle, you're putting your boat on a bigger boat that's got an engine to push it up there, because it's just so hard to navigate these the coasts, even to this day. We got modern tools and everything else, but now go back 150 years and it becomes a real crazy thing.
This was also very difficult because the Panama Canal did not exist. So they had to unload everything in Panama, go on a train all the way to the other side of Aspinwall,
Yeah.
reload onto the Central America, and then take off again.
Yeah.
So it wasn't easy for the passengers either.
Not a pleasant environment either.
No.
I mean,
No.
if you read about the environment in Panama, talking about August,
No way.
so
Yeah.
you imagine the weather, the bugs,
Yeah.
the disease that they were
Mhm.
exposed to.
The heat.
That alone was a challenge,
Sure.
to say the least, and a dangerous journey, just the railroad trip across.
That's another interesting thing. I'll bring Bob into the big screen here. I had another guy named Jim DeFelice on the show, and he wrote the book about the Pony Express. And we think about the Pony Express, we look 18 months. And basically the first message that comes across is Lincoln won, and so it's just this short sliver of time with these high school kids riding horses and then obsolete.
It's the whole idea of communication with California was so key.
Yeah.
I mean, the mail steamers that also carried all of the treasure, this was like 3.5 weeks, 24 days. And to have a two-way business conversation with your associates in New York, if you were a San Francisco businessman, it would take 2 months to have a two-way conversation.
Yeah.
Every thought, every exchange, whatever. I mean, how, when the enormous impact that the telegraph had. Well, the Pony Express, you're right, was just 18 months until the telegraph went across, and then you had that means, and then the railroad was completed in 69, and then basically we forgot about Central America. But at this time, the very name of the ship, Central America, meant like the very best way to get to the gold fields. It was opulent and it was luxury, and yet it was also awful because you're going through Panama in August. It's a terrible place to be.
Title of that book is West Like Lightning until the telegraph comes, and then it's like electricity, and then a train. It's just so funny. And again, like you think you've invented something amazing, and then it's obsolete in an instant. Or someone runs into town saying, "I found gold," and
Right.
so much for that, right? Yeah. What a great story. So tell me more about it.
Sure. We spent a couple of weeks doing some scouting, and we started in Malta to look at water tanks. so we could build the ship and then sink it and film it from underwater. And then we flew over to Ireland, Dublin. We went and scouted locations there and saw one studio.
Mhm.
And then we went up to Belfast, where the Titanic left, and had an opportunity to go to the Belfast Harbor Studios, 2,000 square acres, $600 million facility, 2 sound stages, which we're essentially going to be utilizing, 30,000 square feet apiece. So we'll have one side of the ship in one studio, and the other side of the ship in the other side of the studio. And then just an opportunity to scout and look for images that would be similar to what San Francisco might have looked like back in the gold rush day. And then down to the Dominican Republic, again, to look at another water tank and another studio. And then
Yeah, so I mean, the idea is to find a location that has, most of what we need in one place. We don't have to keep moving. So we landed on Belfast, and we're going to set up shop there. I'm going to go there next week and plant our flag and get started with the art department. And we hope to film the movie starting in August.
Wow, that's exciting.
Yeah.
And when you get the movie filmed, will the recovery of the treasure and all the other artifacts be part of it?
At the end of the movie, Brad, and where we sort of left off. I mean, it's basically how many days total from the beginning to end?
well, you're talking August 20th through September 12th.
Yeah,
23 days.
23 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the story, and then we leave a little bit to the imagination of the viewer, which is where it ends. The ship ends at the bottom of the ocean, and then a time lapse of the ship dissolving, and then the Garden of Gold, and then a little something about in 1988
Yeah.
how Tommy Thompson and this man over here, Mr. Bob Evans, located, and then the scene in the control room of the individual going, you know what that is? You know what that is the robots coming down on the side wheel and the static energy of that room.
Yeah.
So really, in my opinion, that's the next chapter. I think that's something that, maybe, Jim Cameron would love to direct
Sure.
back to the Central America, with Adam Crum here and
Talking about a sequel?
Got to have that.
in an ROV
Second.
down to a mile and a half below the ocean surface.
I want to ask Bob, what's the responsibility for the ship, the artifacts, all the things that are there that you could say are sacred or should be left alone? How do you manage that? And then what environmental responsibility goes with this kind of work?
Well, first of all, the ship is in international waters, so the legal regime under which it exists is not under the sovereign control of any one nation. So in my own mind, in my own scientific mind, ethical rules need to apply. In every project I will ever be involved with, and I will deal with certain ethical rules. However, a shipwreck is not a grave site. A shipwreck is an accident site. And in my mind, we pay tribute to the people who both were perished as a result of that accident and also survived as part of that accident by studying this site, by recovering its artifacts from their continuing state of marine peril in which they sit, and by telling the story to the world. We're paying tribute to this entire thing. So that's a basic fundamental approach to this. You want to do the best work you can with the tools you have at hand, and you want to do it before these things don't disappear into molecules in the deep ocean. It's not a friendly place where they're sitting. It's a shipwreck. It's a junkyard at the bottom of the ocean.
I wanted to ask you, Adam, what is your role with your expertise? I mean, it seems obvious, but specifically, like, what do you do in this project?
I think from a consultant perspective, I've been involved in the project. I've read tremendous accounts about the survivors. I've met multiple heirs of survivors. We've exhibited this treasure over the past 25 years a number of times at fairly substantial venues, and without fail, somebody will come up, and it's always interesting for an heir to just come up and introduce themselves and start showing us images. Bob and I met someone at an event a couple of Augusts ago when we were displaying the artifacts, which have a very personal meaning to a lot of people. The artifacts do, because some of them actually belong to people. And it's interesting. There were 2 trunks, and only 2 trunks recovered, and we know who those 2 trunks belong to. But to have somebody come up and introduce themselves and then open up a folder and they start giving us, letters and accounts and things that have been passed down through generations since the event happened. I think, just telling the stories and having it bring to life. That's why, I mentioned the minute-long version I saw today. I was surprised at how it impacted me at the end.
Yeah.
I watch it for a minute, 8 seconds, and it spoke to me in ways, and it made me realize the struggle. You talk about the strength of the human mind and the will to survive, and imagine what those folks went through for 3 days. The journey itself was hard enough, but can you imagine fighting swells of 40 to 80 feet, winds of 100 miles per hour? You're going down, you're being told you're going down, and you're facing the end of life. And to hear the personal accounts of people that survived, I feel like I know them. Some of them. I've read them so many times and thought about it and pondered it. And this morning, after watching that, I sat there in quiet, drinking my coffee. It was very early. Again, don't do that again.
Sorry about it.
And it really, it just struck me in ways that, I think I do have something to offer in consulting and bringing some emotion and passion. Brad's passion for this project is inspiring and has been for a long time. And not just this project, but the treasure itself. So, I think I have something to offer in that regard. And I have access to things that maybe they wouldn't have access to without my presence.
Well, the other thing I want to mention is you can see this image behind Adam right now. I believe that Finest Known will be involved in this type of work that's been produced by Gary. And I visualize Finest Known certificate of authenticity with a limited edition of this particular image that it's been created by Gary. And there are quite a few clients that own the shipwreck treasure that would probably love to have something like this on their wall at home.
Enjoy the trailer.
Please enjoy the trailer.
In my hometown, the last survivor of the USS Indianapolis exists. His name's Harold Bray. We got a statue for him. We love him. And when he talks about being on the Indy when it sinks, it's hyper detailed. Right before it was hot, so he was sleeping up on decks. All kinds of guys were, and he didn't have his shoes with him. And then he's like, "I remember seeing my shoes go into the ocean, And then I went into the ocean. And he talks about it. And one of the things he said, one of the reasons why he survived was he found a piece of something to float on, and he got the hell away from everybody else because it was people were dying.
Yeah.
And they were drowning each other and they
Yeah.
were attacking each other. And I said, everybody doesn't know. A third of the people on the ship died instantly going down with the ship. A third died when they floated out in the middle of the ocean for 5 days. And then a third survived until this last person. And so all of these guys, the accounts, it's remarkable. And then the families, it's so powerful, that group. And I'm just doing this for reference so we all can kind of understand like what this is. There's a guy named, I guess he's Captain Toddy. He piloted the last USS Indianapolis most recently. So he owns that entire community. This is a modern man who isn't that old. He's just a modern person who's just recently retired, but that entire community belongs to him right now because he's the last commander of a USS Indianapolis.
Mhm.
And the kids and the grandkids and now the great grandkids all get together still to this day. And I don't know how tight the sense, because it's a lot longer, but do you have a sense for that and what they deal with, or are they full of pride about it? Is it a curiosity? How are the people who are the descendants of the survivors of the sinking?
Well, it's generations removed. So I think the impact from emotions of sorrow and that type of thing is probably not there. But you said a sense of pride.
Mhm.
It's kind of a weird sense of pride,
Sure.
but they have a connection to something that happened a long, long time ago. And, we as humans like to connect our dots. Ancestry.com is successful because of that. I mean, I've done extremely deep dives on both sides of my family, and I feel a connection to people that go back 10 generations, and you still connected to it, and you get a sense of pride. The person that Bob and I met, I believe she was the great granddaughter of the purser from the ship, and
Yeah, it was amazing.
a survivor actually talks about the last time they saw him. And she told us that story.
Yeah.
And the last time he was seen alive by a survivor.
Yeah.
So, and there's been others. I could go on. We toured this treasure through. You were instrumental in putting that together through.
Isle of Capri Casino.
Yes. So
Yeah.
we toured this thing around. We were touring around $15 million worth of treasure. Unbelievable response. I mean, people lining up. This is grown men and women lining up 200 and 300 yards long, waiting to just see it.
Mm-hmm.
And we've met a number of people that came up and start telling us stories. And it was interesting to me how connected they were to the story of something that happened 150 years ago.
And in some ways, it's not that long ago. President Tyler, until just recently, had 2 living grandkids, not great grandkids, grandkids, and he was president, before even that time.
Yeah.
And so that's a remarkable thing, and how recent this really can be. Now, look, that's a crazy generational thing, but still, grandkids, and they just now passed away in the last couple of years. This year, I think, or last year was the last one. So it isn't that long ago. I'm working on a story from the 1800s, same kind of thing. There's letters that exist, all this stuff, and these guys, they fought in 1889. And then they had lives. They mentioned this fight was so epic. It's not about the fight, but I just want to shrink the time zone. These guys fought in 1889. The fight was so big that as late as when I'm doing my research, because you know how this goes, as 1960, there's a live, capture of the fight, and they're like, and then old Jim Corbett who fought, it's like it was still part of the thing, and that was almost 90 years later at that point.
Yeah.
Crazy that these things really have a life of their own and stay existent. Now, how known did the Central America sinking remain for people? Like Billy the Kid was lost to the ages until someone dug him up and said, "Oh my gosh, look at this story."
The SS Central America was remarkably lost to its own generation, I think. There are these snippets that have survived within individual families and such, but it sank in 1857, and the Civil War, followed it just a few years later. So even in the minds of that generation, when they're thinking back on the horrors or grand events or anything like that in their lifetime, most of those people were thinking about Gettysburg or Antietam, or in my family, Chancellorsville, or something of that nature. Not this shipwreck where 425 men lost their lives. There were tens of thousands of casualties in the Civil War. It was an appalling thing. And I think it tended to kind of erase the Central America from the immediate history afterwards. Certainly there are those individual families that remember it, but a lot of individual families have rediscovered it. And that's what Adam was talking about. I got a call years ago now, but I was out in my sheep barn one winter, and I get a call from the fun show in Florida, and Don Perlman, a great public relations man, has a woman there with him who was I think she was three greats, but the great granddaughter of the surviving officer James Fraser, who was the highest surviving deck officer of the SS Central America. She had found in a shoebox the telegram that he had sent home upon arriving in Norfolk. It was absolutely amazing. And she brought it to a coin show in Salt Lake City and showed it to me. You know, these things are remarkable, but she was completely unaware of that her ancestor had been a man of such importance back in that time. It's a fascinating phenomenon. So I'm happy that Brad and others are bringing this story to light. It's a remarkable story and a remarkably human story.
One other thing I just want to mention, you mentioned the Indianapolis when they started going into the water. Well, in the Central America, when the ship started to sink, you had all these men. All the women and children had been saved by Captain Herndon, making sure that they got into the lifeboats before the men. And then there was a heroic rowing journey from the Central America to the Brig Marine, which started going farther and farther away from them because they didn't have the sails necessary to bring them closer. So that event took place when the ship sank, and then you had all these men in the water. And then as the ship went down, anything that wasn't nailed down when it got below the surface, and then it was obviously in a vortex, started firing back up to the surface. So planks of wood and things were flying 50 to 100 feet in the air and then landing on the survivors. So adding insult to injury, men were grabbing each other and trying to survive.
Yeah.
That was a major part of this story.
Yeah.
So
I think it's going to be emotional, Bob, when you're visiting us in Belfast and you get to actually walk next to the SS Central America that we build. You get to see it up close and in person.
Come to life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to see your set.
Oh yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
We forget disasters. I mean, hurricanes last season, it was all over the news for 2 days. And the tragedy that the people in North Carolina and Florida suffered through those hurricanes, most of them are still suffering from them today, but none of us read about it anymore. That's lost to news. Something else came along and trumped it, and Central America was no different. That's human nature. But one thing I do know about human nature is we love a story of hope, tragedy, and then triumph. And for those survivors that did survive the Central America, that was a triumph, and they lived on to tell this story, and then tell the stories of those that didn't make it. And a movie for me would bring all of that to the forefront. I've lived it for a quarter of a century, Bob longer, but I'm excited for other people to see it. No one knows the story of Central America. I mean, such a small number of folks know this story. And to see it come to life where people can see it and live it, I think people will appreciate it. I mean, teenagers today, they freak out if their battery is going to die on their cell phone. Could you imagine going through 3 days of knowing or feeling like you're going to perish, there's no hope of survival, yet continuing to fight and struggle through it all? And that's what these men were doing. I mean, and Captain Herndon he's an American hero even before the Central America. And the way he orchestrated and stayed calm and kept these people working believing that they weren't going to survive. But he knew that keeping them busy and giving them some hope to continue to work through a tragedy and through the pain of it all and the fear and anxiety that you must have felt, it had to be unbelievable.
Yeah.
So,
A range of emotions.
yeah, I'm anxious to see it come to life.
Yeah.
Just seeing the 1 minute trailer brought it to life for me. Obviously I'm a little more attached to the story than the average person, but it really brought to life the real life struggle that these folks went through and the fear and anxiety they must have felt.
We're coming up on an hour, so I want to make sure we give a chance to check in. Gary, your sound has been a little challenging, so I'm going to let you talk real quick about the images and anything else you want to say before we wrap this up. So, Gary, come on in the big window.
Well, trying to stay awake. I was up late last night working on the SS Central America. So, yeah, as Brad mentioned, he brought me in to do key art for a lot of the scenes that he felt were instrumental in communicating the story. And so of course it all starts with the script that he and John wrote, and taking those words and then the vast knowledge and visuals stuck in Brad's head and bringing them to life on mainly the computer screen at this moment. And it takes a lot of research. We're dealing with history, we're dealing with accuracy, and so that adds a challenge that I enjoy. I've done a lot of historical imagery in my career, and so I have plenty of resources to pull from with this team and this group of people here. And so it's a very collaborative effort, and Brad and I will talk and share ideas, and as well as with the rest of the team. And so I'll start with sketches, traditional sketches, and expand from there depending on the image I'm trying to create. And I've a long history of developing workflows for projects I've been on in the game industry. And so along with actually doing the art, it's important that I develop the process so that it works in a pre-production and production environment for film. And so that's very interesting as well. And so as I create the art, I also develop my workflow so that I'll be able to provide for whoever needs a visual during the making of the film. And sometimes it may be a thumbnail sketch that blocks in a scene at the last minute, or all the way to some key art to communicate mood or some other element that needs to be visualized. And so I use a variety of tools from traditional all the way to AI, and make use of what I need to provide the artwork the production needs. The trailer is an example of that whole process from working with Brad from the script and thumbnailing, 3D modeling, and all the way to some AI and video editing. So it's a fun project for me because I get to take on a lot of hats, at least right now, until they put me in a room somewhere.
And Bob, why don't you give us your closing thoughts?
My closing thoughts is like, yeah, let's do it. Adam was talking about how these people have become characters to him. They've long been characters to me. I told people even way back during the time we were searching for the Central America 40 years ago that I felt like if certain of these people walked up and said hi to me on the street, I would just pick up a normal conversation with them, knowing so much about them from what they were through. It's so great to be able to capture their real thoughts and to then be able to put that into a dramatic form. I think is that's going to be wonderful. I frequently quote certain of these individuals during my talks about the Central America, so I know their language, and I can't wait to hear them see them come to life. It'll be wonderful.
Fellas, I guess Dan, start us off. What are your final thoughts?
Just two things. Grateful to be here, working with very talented people and meeting. For me, it's all about the people, and you become a family with everybody. And I just couldn't be more proud of the script Brad wrote and our friendship and meeting Adam and Phil and John and everybody. But also the daunting task of the amount of work that's in front of us. This is going to be a tremendously difficult project, but I think we're all going to roll up our sleeves, and it's going to be a fantastic movie. I'm excited to see it come to life.
Love it. Brad?
Yeah, I mean, we're climbing Mount Everest here. This is a $109 million film that Dan has budgeted. And so this is the second of 9 innings, and we hope to announce towards the end of February, maybe 1st of March, who William Morris Endeavor will help us find for the director and the talent that we can attach to the project. So, and the other thing I want to mention is Adam has been not only my friend, but mentor for the last 25 years. And I owe him a debt of gratitude because he taught me everything about anything that has to do with numismatics, rare coins, and specifically coins from the shipwreck and the gold ingots, and all the individuals that I've talked to over the last 25 years that have wound up owning this treasure. It's something that just, the story never ends. So
I love it.
that's it.
Adam, you can wrap us up.
Well, I'm probably not the one to wrap this up, but echoing what Brad said, he and I have developed a friendship and a brotherhood actually over the past 25 years.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been a minute. And to see his passion for this, and he's talked about a movie since day one, and to see the effort that he's got thus far, and I know the mountain in front of him. I don't claim to know how to make a movie at all. That's not within my wheelhouse. I can't imagine the enormity of this project that you guys are facing.
Yeah.
But I can see the enthusiasm, and I've watched you guys over the past couple of months begin the journey, and I'm anxious to enjoy that journey with you in however you need me to be involved. And I can't think of a better word than what Bob said. I think it's wonderful. I can't wait to see these people's lives come alive again and have their stories told on the big screen. I think it's exciting and can't wait to see it.
Yeah, likewise. All right, everybody. This is the Break It Down Show. Thank you all for watching. These guys will be back again. We'll talk more because I got to know more about the process as you guys go through.
It's all good.
So, yeah. So we'll do all of
Just
that.
begun.
Thank you all for watching.